Welcome to another episode of the Antifragility Reframe podcast, where struggles become strength and stress fuels growth. I'm Dr. Frank L. Douglas, your host. My guest today is Ms. Julie Barth. She is an author of the book Notes from a Blackberry. She has had a very, I would describe it as tragic life. She probably would not see it that way, but certainly an example of someone who has ultimately come back stronger in spite of the significant challenges that she has had. She is the founder of the Colin James Barth Outreach, which is a charitable organization to help women who find themselves in very difficult situations. Ms. Barth, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I mentioned what I call as tragic. I know you don't see it that way, but could you share with us your journey that led you to set up the Colin James Barth Outreach Charitable Organization?
Sure. Um, I was married to my grammar school sweetheart. He was my first kiss, and we obviously lost touch for many, many years, and met back up again in the '90s in a bar of all places. And it was almost as if I, didn't realize that something was missing, but the minute that we, reconnected, it was instantly, this friendship, more than obviously romantic, but definitely just a friendship of that we had known each other for as long as we had. And we ended up moving in together and having my son, my oldest son. I'm the mother of six, so it kind of started down the path to six. We were living in downtown Chicago, and at the time he was a trader down at the Board of Trade, and it just kind of felt like it was time to return to the same suburbs that we had grown up together in. So we moved home and immediately got started on having more children because we always wanted a big family. And I had a couple miscarriages, got pregnant with my daughter, Tatum. And just right from the get go, it was like she wouldn't grow. They induced labor, sorry. And it was within about 3 minutes, her heart rate just completely crashed. And we weren't in a level 2 types situation at the hospital because they thought she was about 5 pounds. I was almost full term. But when it really started to kick into high gear, the placenta was wrapped around her throat. But more importantly, she was only 3 pounds. So they delivered her cesarean, but they just weren't prepared for her size, and they used the wrong size intubation tube, which, at that time, it sounds like it happened in that sequence. But the problem was that they weren't honest with us from the beginning of what happened. So it took us, she was in the NICU for about 3 months, and it took us 5 years or more to have her airway reconstructed. And in the meantime, she still didn't grow. Like we couldn't, there was no rhyme or reason why, she would throw up. But she just, at the age of a year old, after random strangers, about 3 times telling me this, I did Google it or AOL it, and up popped something called primordial dwarfism. And it explained everything, it didn't explain the throat and the airway reconstruction, but it did explain everything prior to her birth. So I think when he passed, everyone else's grief had just started. And I was like, I had grieved the loss of him every day for 16 months because once he was diagnosed, he really wasn't the same person. And so when everyone else was just starting to grieve, I was in a position where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I have to, I can't sit in this grief with you anymore. And so I felt very out of place in my own life. I didn't feel like I had many friends that I could confide in. And so I think that there was a gentleman that was working in my house, and I kind of wanted to move on. I had lost, my late 20s to Tatum's illness. And then I had lost pretty much all my 30s to, Colin's illness. And I just wanted to move on. I wanted to, have the family that I wanted, which included more children. And I met a gentleman who was working in my house, and he seemed to be, he had just, gotten over a relationship himself. He seemed to be a very, he always seemed to be a sad soul, as if he was somehow, broken and life was down on him. And I felt like, oh, well, we're kind of in the same place. We can heal each other. And at that point, it was when we decided to move away,
I hate
with my.
I hate to say it, but when you said that, I just got the picture of two broken people deciding that they can heal each other.
Yeah. Well, I think that that is what I thought. I'm not sure that that was ever in his repertoire of what he wanted out of the relationship, but that was the side that he showed to me. That is the way that he relayed his feelings to me. That his girlfriend had cheated on him, that they were supposed to get married, but she was, crazy and a drug addict. And so he was feeding me a story that led me to believe that we were both broken, and that if we moved away together, we could build a life and, kind of, yeah, heal together, heal one another. My daughter, Tatum, who has special needs, came down with a rare form of connective tissue cancer. So it was very unexpected. It was an accident where my son had hit her and it revealed itself. So, here Tatum had, made it through birth and everything that came from that and all the surgeries, and she's finally healing, and then she was thrust right back into surgeries and hospitals. And so I think it was, we had several, the only way to cure the cancer that she had was removal, surgical removal. So I think we went in about 5 or 6 times. They had to remove her right side torso and graft her legs to fill in the space. And it really was during that period when I was forced to really see that the person that I had moved away with, that was so broken, was describing himself as broken, really was not the person that he was making himself out to be.
We talk about anti-fragility based on Nassim Taleb, who pointed out that resilience is about bouncing back when we've had challenges, stressful situations. But being anti-fragile is really becoming stronger because of the challenges or the stresses that we had. I like to say resilience is bouncing back, but anti-fragility is bouncing forward. And, to sort of continue that metaphor, if you like, here you've had a life where there was a lot of fragility in it, with the birth of Tatum and her life being a fragile life. Ultimately, your husband Colin's life being a fragile life. The whole relationship uh, that you were living after Colin's death, again, being a fragile one. And so, in a real sense, and here you are, uh, stronger than you were when you were, as you call it, in this fishbowl as the beacon of sadness. And here you are stronger. Could you tell us, for example, what helped you to change your perspective, to change your mindset?
So I think I became very good at, I don't want to say manipulating, but, you know, pretending for others that everything was okay. And I believed it so severely that I convinced myself, I think, that it's true. And that's kind of, it changed my mindset at that point to think like, as bad as things are, no matter how bad things became with Colin, no matter how many bad things happened to Tatum, I could show up at the hospital and I could find, 20 different people that had it worse off than me. And that really changed my mindset. Are things great? No. Could they be worse? Always. When Colin died, I wanted to get my life back to what I thought it was. I was always trying to get back to something until, really, I think after my divorce, I took a look around and I thought, you can't ever get back to where you were. It's that whole, when you leave for college, you can't ever go home again. but that's not a bad thing.
So tell us as we close about, uh, given your experience and given the things that you learned, how you have turned that in not only to keep the memory of Colin James Barth alive, but also to benefit other women, particularly divorced women.
Well, the standard of a woman's standard of living goes down about 44%, and a man's goes down 10. And I just think there's systematic ways in America that we don't even recognize until we are in that position, that things happen the way they do. And there's also charities out there that are willing to help, but it's like finding a needle in the haystack. So my charity is really committed to trying to bridge charities that have resources available with the women who need them, because when you hit crisis, you're trying to take care of your children, pay your bills, and do everything else. So our charity is trying to match people with the resources that are out there and then define the gaps where no resources exist, and there aren't many. But if we can throw our resources behind doing what nobody else is doing, then we're not reinventing the wheel, and we're making good use of the resources that are out there already.
Yeah, fantastic. Ms. Barth, thank you for sharing your story and helping us to realize that indeed, in spite of very difficult times, we can indeed bounce forward. One of the many things that you said, but will really this one will stick with me. As I mentioned to you before, uh, pardon me, stimulated by Nassim Taleb, thinking of resilience as bouncing back, but being anti-fragile, and I like to think of it as bouncing forward. And you said, after a stress, or severe challenge, you said, we can't never get back to where we were. And if resilience is trying to get back to where we were, if we bear that in mind, we can never get back to where we were. We have one of two choices. We can be worse or we can be better. So let's think anti-fragile and let's do what you have done with your life, is to look at all the challenges that you have had and do the things that have helped you not only to be better, but to make the lives of many others better. Thank you very much for all that you do, and all the best to you and your family.